The man who mocked his wife in court just made the biggest mistake of his life. He called her unambitious, plain, and lucky to be getting his money. He left the courthouse laughing, ready to start his new life. But as he stepped onto the sidewalk, he saw her. He saw the woman he'd just discarded. And then he saw the car, a $1 billion, one-of-a-kind Rolls-Royce. He froze, his smile cracking, as the most powerful man in the city, a man who could destroy him, stepped out and opened her door. The air in courtroom 3B was stale, tasting of cheap disinfectant and expired dreams. It was the perfect setting for the final, rubber-stamped death of a 15-year marriage. Marcus Thorne sat with his back rigid, his $4,000 Italian suit a shield of armor. He looked, as he always did, like a man who had just stepped off the cover of Success magazine. Beside him, his shark-toothed lawyer, a man named Harrison, droned on about assets. Across the aisle sat Eleanor Vance. To look at her, you wouldn't see the woman who had built an empire. You would see what Marcus saw, what he had made her. She wore a simple, beige cardigan. Her honey-blonde hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her face was devoid of makeup. She looked like a woman bracing for impact, not one fighting a war. She looked forgettable. And in recognition of Mrs. Vance's contributions to the marriage, Harrison said, infusing the word contributions with a subtle, oozing skepticism, Mr. Thorne has graciously agreed to an alimony settlement of $5,000 per month for a period of 24 months. Marcus smirked, graciously. He was paying to get her out of his life. It was a bargain. Eleanor's lawyer, a tired-looking public aid appointee named Sarah, had argued for more, but Marcus's financials were airtight. He'd spent the last 2 years carefully moving assets, creating shell companies and liquidating joint accounts, diverting everything to his new flagship company, Thorne Analytics, the company he told everyone he built from scratch. "Does Mrs. Vance agree to these terms?" the judge asked, his voice bored. Eleanor's voice was soft, but it didn't tremble. "Yes, Your Honor." "Does Mr. Thorne agree?" "Absolutely, Your Honor," Marcus boomed, a little too cheerfully. The gavel struck. It was done. Marcus stood, buttoning his suit jacket. He couldn't resist one last look. He walked over to her, his shadow falling across her. She slowly looked up, her eyes, a deep, intelligent grey he hadn't truly looked into for years, meeting his. "Well, Eleanor," he whispered, leaning in so only she could hear. The scent of his expensive cologne, the one she'd bought him, washed over her. "It's over. You're free." He made it sound like a death sentence. "Goodbye, Marcus," she said. He chuckled, a dry, nasty sound. $5,000 a month. Try not to spend it all in one place. You know," he glanced at her cardigan, "I'm not even sure you know any places that expensive. You were always so simple." She didn't rise to the bait. She just watched him, her expression unreadable. His cruelty, now unchecked, escalated. "Honestly, Ellie, what are you going to do? You have no skills. You have no ambition. You haven't had a real job in 15 years. You're a very well-educated librarian with no library." He smiled, a flash of white, predatory teeth. "Good luck, Eleanor. I hope you remember how to use a bus pass. Maybe you can get a job sorting books, if they'll have you." He turned and strode out of the courtroom, his polished shoes clicking in victory. He didn't look back. He was already thinking about Chloe, his 25-year-old assistant, and the bottle of champagne they had waiting. Eleanor sat alone for a full minute. The sound of Marcus's laughter echoed in her ears. Librarian. Simple. No ambition. Slowly, she unclipped the bun, letting her hair fall to her shoulders. She took a deep breath, the stale air suddenly feeling charged with potential. She stood up, straightened her beige cardigan, and picked up her worn leather satchel. She walked out of the courtroom, not as Eleanor Thorne, the dismissed wife, but as Eleanor Vance, the woman who was finally, truly free. Marcus felt the sharp November air hit his face as he pushed through the heavy oak doors of the courthouse. He felt magnificent. He felt light. He had just shed 130 pounds of dead weight, plus a beige cardigan. He pulled out his phone, a sleek black slab, and dialed Chloe. "It's done. I'm free. Tell the reservation I'll be there in 20... Champagne, the good stuff." He pocketed the phone, a wide, genuine grin splitting his face. The world was his. Thorne Analytics was about to launch a new predictive algorithm, Odysseus, that would revolutionize the market. His investors were ecstatic. His new life was just beginning. He looked down the wide marble steps, expecting to see his driver. And that's when he saw her. Eleanor was standing at the curb, just standing. Her hair was down now, and the wind was catching it, making it look almost vibrant. She was looking at her own phone. Marcus smirked again. He couldn't help himself. He was about to shout one last, "Good luck," when a car turned the corner. It wasn't a car. It was a statement. It was a Rolls-Royce Phantom, the extended wheelbase model, in a custom, shimmering midnight blue that looked black until the light hit it. It moved with a silence that was louder than any engine. Marcus, a car fanatic, knew this vehicle. It wasn't just expensive, it was exclusive. This was the Tempest edition, a rumored $3 million build, one of only 20 in the world. He watched, confused, as it glided to a perfect stop exactly where Eleanor was standing. A very high-end cab, he thought, absurdly. Did her lawyer spring for a car service? The driver in a crisp dark uniform got out, but he didn't move to the passenger door. He moved to the back. The rear hinged door opened and a man stepped out. Marcus stopped breathing. His blood didn't just run cold, it froze solid. His hand, which had been halfway to his pocket, stopped in mid-air. The smile on his face didn't fade. It fractured like a sheet of ice hit with a hammer. He knew that face. Everyone in the world of finance and tech knew that face. It was the face that stared out from Forbes, Wired, and the Wall Street Journal on a regular basis. It was Alexander Sterling, the Alexander Sterling, the reclusive, camera-shy, genius billionaire behind Sterling Innovations, a man whose personal net worth was rumored to be north of 50 billion. A man Marcus had tried and failed to get a meeting with for 3 years. A man whose company was the only true competitor to Thorne Analytics. Sterling was tall, with sharp features and piercing blue eyes. He wore a simple, dark grey turtleneck and a tailored black coat. No suit, no tie, no nonsense. He looked less like a billionaire and more like a predator. Marcus was completely, utterly paralyzed. What is happening? Why is he here? Then the world tilted on its axis. Alexander Sterling, a man who commanded armies of executives who could buy and sell countries, walked around the massive car, his gaze fixed on Eleanor. He didn't even glance at Marcus. He reached Eleanor, and a small, genuine smile touched his lips. He stopped in front of her. "Eleanor," he said, his voice a low, cultured baritone. "Alexander," she replied. And then Alexander Sterling reached out, took the handle of the passenger door, and opened it for her. He held it open, one hand resting on the door, in a gesture of old-world patience and respect. Eleanor turned. She looked up, past her small spot on the curb, and her eyes met Marcus's halfway up the stairs. She didn't smile. She didn't smirk. She just looked at him. It was a look of pure, unadulterated finality. It was the look of an avalanche just as it begins to move. Then she turned her back on him. She gave Alexander a bright, warm smile, a smile Marcus hadn't seen directed at him in a decade, and said, "Thank you, Alexander, I'm ready." She slid into the plush, cream-colored leather interior. Sterling shut the door with a solid, expensive thunk. He paused for a second, then finally, turned his gaze toward the steps. His eyes found Marcus. It was not a look of recognition. It was a look of complete and total dismissal. It was the look a man gives an insect he has decided not to crush. Sterling nodded once, a sharp, cold gesture. Then he walked back around the car, got into the back seat, and the Rolls-Royce pulled silently away from the curb, merging into traffic and disappearing. Marcus remained frozen. His $4,000 suit felt like a cheap rag. His victory tasted like ash. Librarian. No ambition. Good luck with the bus pass. His phone, which he had apparently dropped, lay shattered on the marble. Chloe was still on the line, her tinny voice screaming, "Marcus! Marcus, what's wrong? Where are you?" But Marcus couldn't speak. He couldn't move. He could only stare at the spot where the car had been, his entire world, his entire self-image, atomized in less than 30 seconds. The next 48 hours were a descent into a cold, private hell for Marcus Thorne. The celebratory champagne with Chloe was battery acid. He sat in the high-end restaurant, Le Ciel, staring blankly at the city lights, replaying the scene on the steps. "Marcus, you haven't heard a word I've said," Chloe pouted, adjusting the strap of her very new, very expensive red dress. "I asked if we should get the caviar." "What? No. Yes. Get whatever you want," he snapped, his voice tight. "What is wrong with you? You should be happy. You're free from that ghost." Marcus flinched. Ghost. Eleanor had been a ghost, but the woman who got into that car, that was not a ghost. He went home to his sterile, glass-walled penthouse, the one Eleanor had never been allowed to decorate. He poured a 3-finger glass of Macallan 25 and went to his computer. He typed Alexander Sterling into Google. He knew the basics. Tech genius, inherited an old money safe and lock company and turned it into a global cybersecurity and innovations empire, famously private, no social media, no family. Then he typed Alexander Sterling and Eleanor Vance. 0 results. Alexander Sterling and Eleanor Thorne. 0 results. He spent hours cross-referencing, searching, digging. Nothing. There was no connection. It was impossible. He went to his office the next day, a fog of anger and confusion clinging to him. "Good morning, Mr. Thorne," his new assistant said. "Get me everything we have on Sterling Innovations," he growled. "I want their last 5 years of press, their SAC filings, their key personnel. And get me a PI, a good one, a discreet one. I want to know where my ex-wife is." "Sir, now!" He locked himself in his office. He tried to focus on the Odysseus launch. This was his baby, his masterpiece, the algorithm that could predict consumer behavior with 99.7% accuracy. It was going to make him a billionaire, just like Sterling. But a nagging, worm-like thought had burrowed into his brain. He pulled up the original source code for Thorne Analytics, the Genesis code, as he'd named it, the one he'd developed all those years ago. He stared at the lines of complex mathematics, a language he could read and sell, but not write. He remembered Eleanor, years ago, in their tiny apartment, hunched over a second-hand laptop, her eyes glowing in the dark. "It's not just code, Marcus," she'd said, her voice electric with passion. "It's a way of thinking. It's behavioral economics translated into pure math. It can see what people want before they do." "That's great, baby," he'd said, kissing the top of her head. Just make it work, so I can sell it. He shook the memory away. She'd given him the idea, sure, a contribution, as Harrison had so brilliantly put it. But he was the one who built the company. He was the face. He was the genius. A call came in. It was from his contact at Bainbridge Capital, his lead investor. "Marcus, my man. Ready for the big launch?" "You know it, Jeff. We're on track to change the world." "Love to hear it. Hey, quick one. You know Alexander Sterling, right?" Marcus's blood pressure spiked. "Only by reputation." "Why?" "Weirdest thing. He just bought out Vanguard's entire stake in our fund. Just called and made an offer they couldn't refuse. He's a silent partner now. Didn't ask for a board seat. Nothing. Just bought in." "What?" Marcus's throat was dry. "Yeah, wild, right? Anyway, must mean he's a fan of your work. The Sterling Innovation seal of approval. This is huge, Marcus. Don't screw it up." The line clicked dead. Marcus stared at the phone. "He's a fan of your work. A cold dread, heavier and more profound than the shock on the steps, settled over him. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't random. This was a chess move. He was so busy looking for Eleanor, he hadn't realized the dragon was already inside his castle. He went home and tore apart his old study, the one Eleanor had used. It was already cleared out, just as she'd been instructed. But he went to the built-in desk, to the bottom drawer she always kept locked. He'd always assumed it was full of letters or sentimental junk. He got a crowbar from the utility closet and pried it open. It was empty, completely empty, except for a single, new-looking key. Not a house key, a small silver key, a safe deposit box key. Underneath it, taped to the bottom of the drawer, was a post-it note. On it was one word in her clean, precise handwriting: checkmate. To understand what Marcus was just beginning to realize, one had to go back 20 years. Eleanor Vance was not a librarian. Eleanor Vance was a prodigy. She had been accepted to MIT at 16. She'd completed a dual PhD by 24 in two fields that rarely overlapped: advanced computer science and behavioral psychology. Her thesis, The Architecture of Choice, was a groundbreaking 400-page document that mathematically modeled human desire. It was brilliant. It was dense. And in the late 90s, it was utterly academic. She met Marcus Thorne at a university mixer. He was a handsome, charismatic MBA student with $1 million smile and $10 in his bank account. He was completely, utterly dazzled by her brain, or more accurately, by what her brain could do for him. "You're a genius, Ellie," he'd told her, over cheap wine. "And I'm a salesman. Together we can't lose. You build it, I'll sell it." And so she did. In the early 2000s, while Marcus was out networking, which mostly involved golf games and expensive dinners he couldn't afford, Eleanor was in their tiny apartment, turning her thesis into a product. She was the one who wrote the Genesis algorithm. She was the one who saw the future of data, long before big data was a buzzword. She built the engine. Marcus built the car around it. He named the company Thorne Analytics. "It has to be my name, baby," he'd reasoned, all charm. "I'm the face. People invest in people. You're the secret weapon. We have to protect you. We can't let any rival poach my brilliant girl." At first, she loved it. She loved being his secret. She loved the work. She didn't care about the spotlight. She only cared about the problem. Then the money came. They moved from the apartment to a house, then to the penthouse. Marcus's suits got more expensive. His networking trips got longer. And Eleanor was slowly, methodically erased. It started subtly. "You shouldn't come to this dinner, Ellie. These guys are animals. They'll just talk about sports and bore you. Then it became instructional. Maybe let your hair down, honey. Wear that red dress I bought you. You look so severe when you're in work mode. First impressions, you know. Then it became dismissive. At a party, an investor had asked her what she did. "Oh, Eleanor keeps the home fires burning," Marcus had boomed, slapping his back. "She's my rock. I couldn't do it without her." When she tried to explain her new work on a predictive model, Marcus had laughed. "Listen to her, my little librarian. Always got her head in a book." He used it as an endearing nickname, a weapon disguised as a pet name. He convinced her she was too academic, too shy, too much to be public-facing. He convinced her that her value was in the background. Slowly, she lost her fire. She stopped coding and started managing. Managing the house, managing the staff, managing Marcus's social calendar. The brilliant PhD was reduced to an executive assistant. The Odysseus algorithm, the one Marcus was banking his future on, had been her last attempt. 3 years ago, she'd felt a spark, a new idea, bigger than Genesis. She'd worked on it in secret, in the dead of night. When she finally showed it to Marcus, he'd stared at the screen for an hour. "It's incredible, Ellie," he said, his voice strange. This is dangerous. We can't let this get out." "What? Marcus, this is the next step. This is the company." "It's too complex," he said, closing the laptop. "Let me handle this. I'll integrate it. But we have to be careful." He never spoke of it again. The final, fatal blow came 6 months ago. She was looking for an insurance paper in his home office, a place she was tacitly forbidden from, and she found a USB drive. It was a pitch deck for his new algorithm, Odysseus. The presentation was slick, full of his branding. And it was her code. He had copied her work, filed patents in his name only, and was raising $100 million on the back of it. But that wasn't the worst part. In the file, she found his new corporate structure. He was creating a new parent company, Thorn Holdings, and he was transferring the Odysseus patent to it. He was also, she saw in a draft email to his lawyer, planning to file for divorce. His plan was to launch Odysseus, cash out, and leave her with half of a company that would be obsolete in 6 months, graciously paying her alimony from his modest CEO salary. He wasn't just leaving her. He wasn't just stealing from her. He was erasing her. He was taking her life's work, her genius, and claiming it as his own, while simultaneously ensuring she had no resources to fight back. That night, something inside Eleanor Vance, the wife, finally died. And something inside Eleanor Vance, the prodigy, was reborn in ice. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She opened a new, encrypted laptop. She took the safe deposit box key, the one to her box, not his, which contained hard copies of her original Genesis code from 20 years ago, complete with time-stamped notes. She didn't call a divorce lawyer. She called an intellectual property specialist. And then she emailed one person. The only person who would understand. The only person Marcus was truly afraid of. Her email to Alexander Sterling was simple. Subject: a problem of architecture. Mr. Sterling, my name is Dr. Eleanor Vance. I am the chief architect of the Genesis algorithm, the platform upon which Thorn Analytics was built. My husband, Marcus Thorn, is currently raising funds using a new platform, Odysseus, which is also my work. He intends to defraud his investors and me. So I am aware you have been trying to acquire Thorn Analytics for years. Marcus has always refused. I am writing to inform you that the company you want is a house of cards. The algorithm you think you're competing with is already obsolete. I am the one who built it, and I am the one who built its replacement. I have no interest in alimony. I am interested in justice. I am available to meet at your convenience." He had replied in less than 5 minutes. Alexander Sterling's office was at the top of the Sterling Innovations Tower, a spire of black glass and steel that dwarfed the rest of the financial district. Unlike Marcus's office, which was decorated with trophies and oversized portraits of himself, Sterling's was a minimalist expanse of concrete, glass, and books. When Eleanor walked in, he was not behind his desk. He was standing by the window, looking at the city. "Dr. Vance," he said, turning. He didn't offer a handshake. He gestured to a low table with 2 chairs. "Thank you for coming. Tea?" "Black, please," Eleanor said. He poured it himself. "I'll be direct," he said, sitting opposite her. "I receive 300 emails a day like yours. My boss stole my idea. My partner cheated me. They are, 99% of the time, noise from disgruntled, average talent people." He fixed her with his piercing blue gaze. "Yours was different." "How?" "You didn't ask for money. You asked for justice. And," he smiled faintly, "you referred to Genesis as a problem of architecture. My own teams have been trying to crack that architecture for 5 years. They call it elegant and infuriating. They say it's more like a philosophy than a code. That was your thesis, wasn't it?" Eleanor was stunned. "You read my thesis?" "Of course. The moment I received your email, I had a team at MIT digitize the copy from the library archives. Most of it was over my head. But the parts I understood, they were revolutionary 20 years ago. They're still revolutionary." He leaned forward. "So, you're the ghost in the machine." "I was," Eleanor said, and the word hung in the air. "Now I want to be the machine." "Tell me about Odysseus," he said. For the next 2 hours, Eleanor didn't talk about the divorce, the betrayal, or the new, younger assistant. She didn't talk about her pain. She talked about the work. She walked him through the Odysseus code. She showed him her design, the one Marcus had stolen. "It's good," Sterling said, his eyes scanning the data she'd brought on a secure drive. "It's predictive. It's powerful. It will, as you said, make Genesis obsolete." "What Marcus doesn't know," Eleanor said, taking a sip of tea, "is that the Odysseus he stole. It's not the final version." Alexander Sterling stopped. He looked at her. "Marcus is a salesman, Mr. Sterling. He's not an architect. He doesn't read the blueprints. He just wants the shiny building. When I showed him the code, he took it. He didn't understand why it worked. He didn't understand its flaws." "Flaws?" "It's a race car," Eleanor explained, her eyes finally lighting up with that old, prodigy fire. "He's driving it like a sedan. Odysseus wasn't just a predictive model. It was designed to learn. But to learn, it needs a specific data environment. A sandbox, I called it. Without that sandbox, the algorithm will start to drift. The predictions will become erratic. It will look like success at first. Huge, impossible to predict wins. But within, I'd say, 6 months of launch, it will start to feed on itself. It will create false positives. It will amplify biases. It will, in short, eat his company from the inside out." Sterling was perfectly still. "You built a time bomb." "I built an engine," Eleanor corrected. "He stole it before I could build the brakes. He was in such a hurry to cut me out, he didn't even wait for me to finish the work." She then pulled out a second drive. This is EVE." "Eve?" "Eleanor Vance engine," she said, with the barest hint of a smile. "It's Odysseus with the brakes. It's stable, it's scalable, And it's 10 times more powerful. It doesn't just predict behavior, Mr. Sterling. It understands intent. Alexander looked at the drive, then back at her. He was not a man given to open displays of emotion, but she saw something in his eyes. It was respect. "What do you want, Dr. Vance?" "I want 2 things. First, I want to file an injunction against Thorn Analytics for intellectual property theft. I want to freeze the Odysseus launch. I have the time-stamped code from my original drives. My IP lawyer says it's a slam dunk." "That will get his attention," Sterling mused, "but it will also tie you up in court for years. He'll bury you in legal fees." "Which brings me to my second request," Eleanor said, meeting his gaze. "I'm not asking you to fight my battles. I'm offering you a partnership. I'm starting a new company. EVE Analytics. I will be the sole proprietor. I will give Sterling Innovations a 40% stake and exclusive use of the EVE engine for 5 years. In exchange, you will fund my startup costs, my legal team, and you will buy a controlling, silent interest in Bainbridge Capital, Marcus's lead investor." Sterling's eyebrows shot up. "That's an aggressive move." "Why?" "Because," Eleanor said, her voice dropping to a whisper, "I don't just want to stop him. I want to watch. I want to be in the room when he finds out the algorithm is flawed. I want to see his face when he realizes the only person who can fix it is the woman he called a librarian." A slow, cold smile spread across Alexander Sterling's face. "Dr. Vance," he said, extending his hand, "welcome to the machine." The divorce, set in motion by Marcus, was a formality. Eleanor agreed to everything. She let him keep the penthouse. She let him keep the art. She accepted the insulting alimony. She let him think he was winning. She let him mock her in the courtroom. She let him have his final, cruel words. Because she knew. As she stood on those courthouse steps, her beige cardigan, a perfect costume of a simple woman, she knew that in T-10 seconds, the real war would begin. She wasn't being rescued by a billionaire. She was arriving at a shareholder meeting with her new business partner. The boardroom at Thorn Analytics was on the 50th floor, a glass box designed to make Marcus feel and look like a king. Today, he felt like a trapped animal. It had been 3 weeks since the divorce, 3 weeks of hell. First, the PI had come back with nothing. Eleanor Vance had vanished. Her new address was a high-security, unlisted trust. Her phone was a ghost. Second, the press release. It had dropped at 9:01 a.m. on a Monday, crashing the servers of TechCrunch. Sterling Innovations announces exclusive partnership with EVE Analytics, helmed by Genesis architect Dr. Eleanor Vance. The article was brutal. It didn't just announce her new company, it credited her. It reframed the entire history of Thorn Analytics. It called her the unsung visionary and the architect behind the curtain. It quoted at length a 10-page statement from Alexander Sterling himself, praising her unparalleled genius and calling her the true north of predictive analytics. Marcus's investors, the ones who hadn't been bought out by Sterling, were panicking. Who is this woman, Marcus? Why does she claim she built Genesis? Is this going to affect the Odysseus launch? Marcus had lied, blustered, and charmed his way through it. She's a disgruntled ex-wife. It's a shakedown, a blatant cash grab. Our IP is secure. The launch is on schedule. He'd pushed the launch forward. He had to. He had to prove his algorithm worked, that he was the genius. It launched, and it was a spectacular success. For 2 weeks, Odysseus worked perfectly. It made predictions that were so accurate, they were almost psychic. Their clients were ecstatic. Marcus was a hero. He was on the cover of Wired. He had done it. And then, this morning, the calls had started. Marcus, the model it's gone wild. It's predicting 100% market buy-in for a product that doesn't exist. It advised 3 of our clients to liquidate all assets and invest in novelty rubber chickens. I am not kidding. It's not just wrong, Marcus, it's insane. It was the drift. The time bomb was going off. Now, he was in the boardroom for an emergency meeting. His main investors, including the new silent partners from Bainbridge, were all there. The air was thick with panic and expensive cologne. "What is going on, Marcus?" demanded Jeff, his face pale. "It's a glitch," Marcus stammered, wiping sweat from his forehead. A small bug in the learning protocol. My team is on it." "Your team?" one of the Bainbridge reps said, a woman with cold eyes. "Your team consists of 3 data analysts you hired from a state college. The real team just sent us this." She slid a piece of paper across the mahogany table. It was a legal document, an injunction. "This was just filed," she said. "Dr. Eleanor Vance versus Thorne Analytics for catastrophic intellectual property theft, seeking an immediate freeze on all assets and a damages claim of $2 billion. Marcus's vision tunneled. She can't prove it." "Oh, I think she can," the woman said. She gestured to the head of the table, where a large video screen flickered to life. Alexander Sterling's face filled the screen. He was not in his office. He was in a different boardroom, sleek and modern, and sitting next to him was Eleanor. She was not wearing a beige cardigan. She wore a sharp, dark blue dress that matched Sterling's. Her hair was down, styled in a way that was both professional and powerful. Her face was clear, her grey eyes bright and unblinking. She looked formidable. "Good afternoon, gentlemen," Sterling said, his voice as calm as a frozen lake. "And Marcus?" Marcus just stared. "Eleanor." "Mr. Thorne," Eleanor said, her voice crisp and clear, cutting through the boardroom like a scalpel. "You have a problem. Your Odysseus algorithm is failing, and you don't know why." You sabotaged me," Marcus shrieked, all pretense of control gone. "This is illegal." "On the contrary," Eleanor said. "You stole a car I was in the middle of building. You didn't wait for me to install the steering wheel or the brakes. You put your investors in it, and you drove it off a cliff. I didn't sabotage you, Marcus. You just aren't a very good driver." Sterling spoke. As of 10 minutes ago, Dr. Vance's lawsuit, backed by the full legal weight of Sterling Innovations, went live. And as of 1 minute ago, Bainbridge Capital, as your lead investor, and, as of this morning, your primary creditor, is calling in your outstanding loans. "What? You can't!" Jeff yelled. "We can," said the cold-eyed woman. "You're in breach of contract. You promised a viable product. You delivered a fraud." Marcus was hyperventilating. "It's not. We can fix it. Eleanor, Ellie, please. Tell them. Tell them we can fix it. You can fix it." He looked at her, his eyes wide and desperate. The mask of the king was gone. All that was left was the terrified, mediocre man she'd met in a bar 20 years ago. Eleanor leaned forward, her face filling the screen. "Fix it? Why would I do that? You're a salesman, Marcus. You're the face." "Go on," she said, her voice dropping. "Sell your way out of this." You bitch!" he screamed, finally. "I gave you everything. I paid for everything. You were nothing. You were a librarian." Eleanor smiled. It was the same bright, warm smile she had given Alexander on the courthouse steps. "You're right about one thing, Marcus," she said. "I am a librarian. And right now, I'm closing the book on you. The EVE engine is already live. We're absorbing your clients as we speak. We're not just taking your company, Marcus. We're replacing it." Sterling ended the call. The screen went black. Marcus looked around the room. The investors were already standing, gathering their papers, not even looking at him. "Jeff? Jeff, wait!" Jeff paused at the door. "You're a fraud, Marcus. A goddamn fraud. You didn't just ruin yourself, you ruined us." The door shut. Marcus Thorne was alone in his glass box, 50 floors above a city that no longer knew his name. He was, in every sense of the word, finished. The 6 months that followed the implosion of Thorne Analytics were, for its 2 central figures, a perfect study in Newtonian physics. For every action, an equal and opposite reaction. For Marcus Thorne, the fall was not a clean break, but a high-speed, scraping descent. The lawsuits were the first wave. Shareholder suits, investor fraud charges, and, most damningly, the federal investigation into his falsified patent applications. He was, as the cold-eyed woman from Bainbridge had predicted, a fraud. And the market has no mercy for a fraud who gets caught. His assets were frozen, then seized. The penthouse with its sterile glass walls, the matte black Ferrari, the portfolio of overinflated stocks, all vanished, fed into the gaping maw of legal fees and damages. Chloe, his champagne and caviar muse, had disappeared the moment his Amex was declined at Le Ciel, her phone number disconnected by morning. He now lived in a 200-square-foot, single-room occupancy unit on the city's grey, forgotten edge. The peeling, water-stained wallpaper smelled of cabbage and old cigarettes. He had a hot plate, a mattress on the floor, and a single, ill-fitting suit he dry-cleaned once a week at a 24-hour laundromat. He spent his days in the fluorescent hum of the public library. The irony was a constant, bitter-tasting acid in his throat. He, the man who had mocked his wife as a librarian, was now hunched over a sticky keyboard, using the free public Wi-Fi. He wasn't just looking for jobs. His name, Marcus Thorne, was now toxic. A Google search of his name was a digital obituary, a cascade of articles on fraud, disgrace, and lawsuit. He was searching for sales executive and account manager, jobs under the pathetic alias Mark T. But his real obsession, the wound he couldn't stop picking, was her. He would type Eleanor Vance into the search bar. His screen would fill with light. Her new company, EVE Analytics, hadn't just launched. It had detonated. It was the single most successful tech launch in a decade. Forbes had her on the cover. The architect of intent, how Eleanor Vance taught computers to understand why. Wired ran a breathless profile. Move over, Sterling. Vance's Eve sees all. He saw pictures of her. She was different. The severe bun and beige cardigans were gone, replaced by sharp, elegant blazers and a confidence that radiated from her. She wasn't just existing. She was thriving. He saw her building, the EVE Analytics Tower. It wasn't a black, imposing spire like Sterling's. It was a marvel of modern architecture, a structure of light, glass, and living green walls. It was open, collaborative, and, according to the articles, a physical representation of the company's philosophy. He stared at her face on the screen, his mind a toxic cocktail of hatred, disbelief, and a strange, desperate longing. She had done this. She had taken his life. She had erased him. He, the king, had been reduced to a ghost, while his ghost, his simple Ellie, had become a queen. The thought solidified in his mind, growing from a spark to a consuming fire. He had to see her. He had to appeal to the woman he'd married, the Ellie who used to look at him with admiration. He would beg. He would apologize. He would do anything. He just needed A second chance. He just needed her to call off the dogs. At 5:03 p.m., on a crisp Tuesday, Eleanor Vance stepped out of the lobby of her building. She was in the middle of a laughing, spirited debate with her new chief of operations, a brilliant 28-year-old named Ben, about the latency in the Tokyo data model. "It's not the data, Ben," she was saying, her eyes bright. "You're looking at the what. We built an engine that sees the why. The pattern isn't in the transactions, it's in the hesitation before the transaction. So it's a behavioral, not a technical problem," he said, his mind visibly blown. "Exactly," she smiled. "We're not just architects of code, we're architects of choice." Her team, young, bright, and fiercely loyal, adored her. She wasn't a boss who commanded from a penthouse office. She was a chief architect who sat with them in the sandbox, the open plan innovation hub at the building's core, and solved problems. She was, in every way, the leader Marcus had only ever pretended to be. "Dr. Vance!" The voice cut through the clean evening air. It was a raw, hoarse sound, like gravel and desperation. Eleanor stopped. Ben and the others on her team paused, instinctively turning. Across the street, lurking by a scaffolding, was a man. He was thin, almost gaunt, and he was swimming in a suit that had once been expensive, but was now just old. His eyes were bloodshot and fixed on her with a frightening intensity. "It's okay," Eleanor said, her voice calm and even. She nodded to her team. "Ben, run with that new query. I'll see you all tomorrow." They hesitated, a protective knot. "Are you sure, Dr. Vance?" Ben asked, his eyes on the man. "I'm sure," she said. "He's just an echo." They went, and Eleanor turned. She didn't cross the street. She stood on her side, on the polished granite plaza of her tower, and waited. Marcus Thorne stumbled into the street, a cabbie laying on his horn. He didn't notice. He stopped 5 feet from her, a chasm of 6 months and $1 billion separating them. "Eleanor," he breathed, his voice breaking. "Ellie, please." "Hello, Marcus," she said. Her voice wasn't cold. It wasn't warm. It was neutral. It was the voice of a scientist observing a specimen. "Look at me," he whispered, gesturing to his frayed cuffs, his hollow cheeks. "Look at what you've done. You ruined me. My life. It's over. I'm nothing." "I didn't do this, Marcus," Eleanor replied, her gaze steady. "Your actions did. I just stopped letting you sign your name to my work." But we were a team," he cried, his voice cracking with a sudden, wild hope. "We built that company together. You can't just erase me. After everything I did for you, I gave you a life." The words, once a weapon that had confined her, now had no power. "What you gave me, Marcus, was a cage," she said, her voice still quiet. "You gave me parties where I was to be seen and not heard. You gave me a wardrobe to make me presentable. You gave me a nickname, a librarian, to diminish me in front of your investors, to make my intelligence small and safe. You didn't give me a life. You put mine on a shelf." He collapsed, not physically, but inside. The anger, the blame. It all shattered, leaving only a hollowed-out desperation. I'm sorry," he stammered, the words foreign and painful on his tongue. "Okay, I'm so sorry. I was an idiot. I was arrogant. I see that now. But I'm begging you, Ellie, don't let me. I'm living in a one-room apartment. I can't get a job. The lawsuits. They've taken everything." He was openly weeping now, ugly, desperate sobs. "I know," she said. His head snapped up, hope flickering in his ravaged eyes. You know? My algorithm is very good, Marcus. It tracks data patterns. Your credit applications, your new address, your job searches under Mark T. You, Marcus, are a very predictable pattern. You find talent, you exploit it, you discard the source. You're doing it right now. No, he shrieked, insulted. No, I'm not. I loved you, damn it. I always loved you. You were my wife. It was his last bullet, the final, hollow attempt at a connection that had never been real. Eleanor looked at him, truly looked at him. At the man who had stolen her work, her name, and 15 years of her life. At the man who had mocked her at her lowest point. And she felt nothing. Not anger. Not pity. Just an absence. The problem was solved. The equation was balanced. No, Marcus, she said, and her voice was kind, which was somehow the most devastating blow of all. You didn't love me. You loved what I could do. You loved the secret weapon. But you were ashamed of the woman. You thought I was a book you could put back on the shelf when you were done. You were wrong. I was the author. She held his gaze. And this chapter is over. She turned, her back straight, her steps unhurried. Wait, he cried, a desperate animal sound. What am I supposed to do? Eleanor paused, her back to him. The sounds of the city rushed in, the traffic, the people, the life she had reclaimed. She thought about his last words to her in that courtroom. Good luck. I hope you remember how to use a bus pass. She turned, just her head, and looked at him over her shoulder. You're a salesman, Marcus, she said. Go sell something. This time she didn't stop. She walked away, the click of her heels on the pavement, a steady, confident rhythm. He didn't follow. He just stood, a statue of a forgotten man, as the world moved on without him. A block later, the midnight blue Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled silently to the curb, a familiar, comforting presence. The back door opened. Alexander Sterling was inside, his face illuminated by the glow of a tablet. He didn't look up as she slid into the plush leather. He's still standing there, Sterling said, his voice a low baritone. He was watching a security feed on his screen. I know, Eleanor said, pulling out her own tablet. Sterling finally looked over, his piercing blue eyes analytical. How did it feel? To close the loop? Eleanor reviewed the final pre-launch data from Tokyo. It felt efficient, she said. The data is now clean. A rare, slow smile touched Alexander's lips. You're a terrible liar, Dr. Vance. It felt good. Eleanor paused, and for the first time, a genuine private smile reached her own eyes. It felt like justice. As it should, he said. The Tokyo launch is at 8 p.m. Their predictive models are a mess. They're chaotic. Good, Eleanor said, her eyes glowing with that old prodigy fire. I love chaos. It's just a complex pattern waiting to be seen. The car glided into traffic. Eleanor looked forward at the city skyline, at the future she was actively, brilliantly architecting. In the car's side-view mirror, the reflection of Marcus Thorne, a tiny, forgotten figure on the sidewalk, grew smaller and smaller until a turn of the corner made him disappear completely. That, my friends, is a story about the danger of underestimating the person beside you. Marcus saw a simple librarian. He was blind to the architect holding up his entire world. He thought he was the king, but he was just a figurehead. And when the real queen took her hand off the board, his entire kingdom came crashing down. This story is a powerful reminder. True power isn't loud, and ambition doesn't always wear a $4,000 suit. Sometimes it wears a beige cardigan, and it's just waiting for the right moment to make its move. What did you think of Eleanor's revenge? Was it justice, or was it too cold? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you loved this story of drama, twists, and a comeback for the ages, please hit that like button. Share this video with someone who loves a good revenge story. And most importantly, subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell. We post real lifestyle stories like this every week, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. Thanks for listening.